Good afternoon, everyone. This is Orion Trips, and I'm here today to talk about George A. Romero's zombie classic, Day of the Dead, which stands tall as my favorite entry in his original Living Dead trilogy. I do want to start off by saying I find it to be a very underrated film. When it comes to the George Romero's original Living Dead trilogy, Dawn of the Dead is typically the one which is celebrated and renowned the most. Otherwise, Night of the Living Dead is also equally very praised for being genre-defining, being so groundbreaking for when it came out. But I think a lot of people miss out on Day of the Dead, which I find to be not even just one of George Romero's best, but one of my favorites. And what I love so much about Day of the Dead is how inspirational it feels, which feels odd to say because it is in some ways by far the most depraved and despicable film of the original three. It's the one where its human antagonists are at their most depraved and their most violent and vulgar and cruel. We have these armed military men who are waving their guns. They're very tyrannical and they're abusing some small shred of authority that they have over this scientific team who they're sharing the lodgings of an underground missile silo with. So we're held captive in this very claustrophobic little space for the entire film, and it's such a suffocating environment and it's so tense, and there's this stage play quality to the film also where we spend so many segments in these small contained little rooms where not much is happening in terms of the sets and the location, but there's a lot of human emotion and a lot of human verbal conflict occurring in this room. So much of the film is just people butting heads. In terms of George Romero's statements on human conflict and on the ability of humans to butt heads during times of disaster, Day of the Dead is maybe the most extreme depiction of this human shortcoming.
I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the fuck you're doing with my time.
It's a film that spends so much time in captivity in these claustrophobic spaces rife with human conflict. The entire film is spent in these little boxes underground, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Not only are we conflicted with our human antagonists, but we have zombies outside, and this is the film where zombies outnumber humans more greatly than ever before. So we're pretty much stuck in this little box, and the whole film feels like a waiting game to get somewhere better. We're kind of counting down the minutes until we get to leave and strive for somewhere better. When do we get to take this helicopter and leave? Day of the Dead does a really good job establishing all of its pieces right out front. It establishes the pieces that we need to escape while also establishing the horrible, despicable circumstance which we need to escape from. Unlike Dawn of the Dead, so much of Dawn of the Dead is about humans who delude themselves into believing that there's some kind of future in this shopping mall. And thus, so much of the film revolves around these humans trying to make a home out of this shopping mall, to make the best out of the worst situation. And it's a delusion, is ultimately what we end up concluding with at the end of the film. But we spend so much time in delusion, in hallucination, thinking that there's some kind of future here, that there's some kind of way to wait out the disaster in this shopping mall, which is a delusion which is shattered before the film's end. And it takes maybe up until the final few minutes of the film for this delusion to be shattered, for these characters to finally wake up. They're very transfixed on this lofty, unrealistic idea, this idealistic view of a shopping mall, that this can be where we spend the rest of our days. But it's all a delusion. But in Day of the Dead, it feels more like there's a harsh, bitter truth being spoken to us right away. There's no delusion that there's any kind of future here. Our setting in Day of the Dead is this underground missile silo, which a team of scientists are sharing with a team of military men. But right away, we see how insane these military men are, that they've totally lost control of their senses, that they're unhinged, they're violent, they're vulgar, they are abusing the zombies, but the abuse will not end at the zombies, that they will also turn and point their guns at the scientists, at the humans who they're sharing the space with. We're viewing right away the incompatibility of these people living together. It's very clear from the get-go that there's no future here, which is something that really sets Day of the Dead apart from Dawn of the Dead, is right away we have this understanding baked into our head. We need to escape this. We need to get out of here. And so Day of the Dead is sort of 100-minute waiting game until we finally get to leave this horrible circumstance. Day of the Dead is not a film which deludes itself into some human dream of waiting out disaster in this consumer paradise like Dawn of the Dead. Day of the Dead is much more realistic. It's much more matter-of-fact and upfront in the fact that there's no future here. Very early on, we speak with John, who is the black helicopter pilot, and he speaks with Sarah, who is our main protagonist of the film, and he gives her a whole speech, which is one of the greatest scenes of the film, this speech about how certain things are beyond human rational understanding. Certain disasters, certain events might just be the work of some creator, but we'll never really know, and there's no point in killing ourselves trying to find out. There's so much more to life, and it'd be such a waste to rot down here just to study some disaster which ultimately is not understandable, which is something beyond human comprehension and human rationality, that we have to leave this behind. And this speech occurs very early on in the film, and it adds to this overall tone of we need to get out of here. There's never a moment of delusion that we can spend another minute here. The entire tone of the film is we can't stay another second, that this is getting out of control. There's no stability at all. There's never even the pretense of stability as there is in Dawn of the Dead. Stability is gone. It's eroded from minute 1 of Day of the Dead. We never have stability. And so the entire film is a waiting game until we get out of here and reach the fabled shores of the beach of some distant sun-baked island, which is bright and sunny and has crisp air, and it's free from this disaster.
That's it. Run, you fucking lunatics.
And I love the way that Day of the Dead pushes you out from its environment by making the unsustainability of its circumstance so clear right from the get-go. The film kind of pushes you out. We spend so much time in this underground missile silo, but we're uncomfortable and we want to leave. We don't want to stay here. It's a drastically different tone than Dawn of the Dead in this sense, because in Dawn of the Dead, we're kind of right there with our protagonists, with our main characters. We kind of draw some sick comfort in being in this shopping mall because it's a sanctuary, it's a safe haven, it's a place of safety amidst this horrible national crisis. But in Day of the Dead, there's never a moment of comfort or safety or stability. Really, right from minute 1, we're at risk, we're at peril, and we have to leave. And Day of the Dead is also scored with this soundtrack, which is so much more characteristically 80s and upbeat, which is there to, in a sense, I think, draw us away from this place. It's there to make us feel a bit more amped. There's less of a rot, there's less of a submission in Day of the Dead's soundtrack. It's much more energizing, and it gets you pumped, and it gets you not just ready for the conflict and the battles that occur on an interpersonal basis, but it gets you ready to leave. It gets you excited to go somewhere else. And there are certain tracks from the soundtrack which even have a tropical quality to them, and it matches the summer theme, this warm weather theme, and it almost promises what we end up getting. It's not until the end of the film that we get to reach the shores of this distant island, but throughout the film we do get little hints of this distant future. Particularly when John is speaking to Sarah, we get certain tropical notes in the music, and it's sort of these little hints that the film is dropping for what's to come. And so Day of the Dead is very much a film that gets to the point right away. Dawn of the Dead was a film which steeped you in the delusions of its characters, and you're right there with them, and you witness their slow burning, long descent into something less than man. Dawn of the Dead is a film in which you learn the truth the long and hard way, but Day of the Dead is a very matter-of-fact, get-to-the-point type film, where right from the get-go we understand we're not safe here, there is no future here, we need to get away. And there's this sense of urgency, this fight or flight in Day of the Dead, which is so potent, it's so present for the entire movie, which makes the film feel like an extended waiting game. That there's all this conflict which occurs, and it's conflict which we know is driving us towards some better resolution at the end. To summarize very simply, it's a film which, by putting us in captivity down here with these psychos, these human psychos who we're simply incompatible with, in this underground missile silo bunker type setup, which is very clearly unsustainable, right from the get-go we understand this is not where we ought to die. And by doing this, the film implores its audience to get outside, to go see the sunshine, to go fly away towards distant, brighter horizons for better places, greener pastures, brighter sands, to escape this circumstance which is so evidently unsustainable, and to not spend a second longer here than we need to. If you did enjoy this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/OrionTrips. You can get access to new videos early before they come out on YouTube. You can get featured in the end credits of videos, and you can know that you're supporting content like this. So that's been it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.